I found the forecasted sales, cost of goods sold, and SGA value for my group. For sales, I took the current year divided by the previous year, and then subtracted 1 from that value, and then found the average value across the previous years. I added 1 to that average value and multiplied it by the latest year to find the forecasted sales for that next year. To find COGS, I took the COGS value and divided it by the sales value for that same year. I found the average of that value and then multiplied it by the forecasted sales for that year. For SGA, I did the same as COGS, except for the initial value. I had to find the SGA value, so I took the selling and general administration expenses and added them all together to find that initial value.
Alright, now I'm going to walk you through how to find the forecasted depreciation for 2015, 2016, and 2017. First, what we need to do is find the property, plant, and equipment amounts for the previous years, which can be found on the balance sheet. So this is this amount right here in the blue. Second, we need to calculate the difference from each year. This will be right here, 3.8 million and 33,000. Next, we need to calculate the proportion of the increase to the sales amount for each year, which is found right here. We simply divided the 3.8 million over the sales amount for 2014 to get this decimal number here and this decimal number here. Then we simply average it out to get this new decimal number. We then take this average decimal rate and multiply it by the forecasted sales amount for 2015, and that'll give us this value right here. We can then add that to the previous year, the most recent year, which would have been 2014, to give us the forecasted value of PP&E in 2015, which would be $74 million. You can now do the same thing 2016 and 17 to get those forecasted values as well. So now that we have our new values, we can now go ahead and find depreciation. We'll first find the average PP&E for each year, which we found right here. We'll also be looking at the average PP&E for the previous years as well. What we'll need to do is find the depreciation expense for the previous years, take that amount and divide it by the average PP&E of the previous years, which gives us a depreciation rate right here, 0.13 and 0.14. We can then find the average of those two and get this value here. Now, to find the forecasted depreciation, we simply take the average depreciation rate and multiply it by the forecasted average PP&E for each year, which would give us the numbers seen in red here, roughly $10 million for each year, and it steadily increases.
First, we're going to start off with some forecasting for GE. The first thing we're going to forecast is the inventory. The forecasted inventory for GE is found by first you have to get the inventory turnover ratio for each year, and the equation for that is cost of goods sold divided by average inventory. And then you get all those for every year and you average them together. And then to get the actual forecasted number for inventory for each year, the equation is 2 times forecasted cost of goods sold divided by average inventory turnover ratio, which you just found, and you subtract current inventory from all of that. As you see here, there's some numbers. In 2014, it was about almost 18 million, just a little shy of it. That was the number that we had. We forecasted 2015, 2016, and 2017. In 2015, the number was just over 16 million. In 2016, it went up again about 2 million to just over 18 million, and then it dropped back down again in 2017 to just over 16 million. So as you can see, it fluctuates, but it doesn't fluctuate a lot. It stays in the range from between 16 to 18 million.
Hey, it's Billy here. I'm going to walk you through investments for GE for the forecasted years of 2015, 2016, and 2017. First thing we need to do is find the investments from the previous years. Here we have 2014, 13, and 12, as well as total assets from those same years. We are then going to divide the investments total divided by the total assets total for each respected year to get a percentage shown here, 1%, 3%, 1%. We are then going to find the average of those 3 years, which gave us 2%. So this is pretty much saying that GE spends roughly 2% of its total assets on investments. So with that information, we can take the forecasted total assets of the coming years, which we found earlier on, and multiply that by 0.02 to give us the forecasted investments for 2017, 2016, and 2015.
We're going to do accounts payable forecasting. To forecast accounts payable for GE, first you do the accounts payable turnover ratio for each year, and the equation for that is purchases divided by average accounts payable, and the purchases equation itself is ending inventory plus cost of goods sold plus beginning inventory. Then you get the turnover ratio for each year, just like inventory, and you average them all together. And to get the forecasted accounts payable number, it's 2 times forecasted inventory plus forecasted cost of goods sold minus beginning inventory divided by average accounts payable. Average accounts payable turnover ratio, and then you subtract the current accounts payable from that whole number. And as you can see here, it's the same years as the inventory. 2014 was one that we were given. 2015, 2016, 2017 we forecasted. In 2014 it was high, just over $31 million. In 2015 it seemed to drop a lot to just over $11 million. 2016 it jumped up again to about $28.5 million. In 2017 it seemed to drop a lot to $5 million. I don't know why, but that's a big fluctuation. That could mean they're going to pay off more bills then, or what, I don't know. But it does fluctuate a lot. And that's it for inventory and accounts payable.
I'm Alyssa Stafuriak, and I forecasted short and long-term debt for GE. So, in order to forecast short-term debt, you need to start off by finding the proportion of short, current, long-term debt to total assets. So I started with 2012, and in 2012, GE had $131,515,000 in short/current long-term debt. So you take that number and you divide it by the total assets for that corresponding year, 2012, and find the proportion or the percentage, which was 19.2%. Then in 2013, did the same thing, took $108,014,000, divided that by 2013's total assets, and got 16.45%. And then also for 2014, just did the same thing. After I got those 3 percentages, I took the average and got 17.11%. And then you take that 17.11% and multiply it by the forecasted total assets for the corresponding years. So for 2015, I just multiplied 17.11% times those forecasted total assets and got $106,537,716. 2016 did the same thing and got $98,081,601. 2017, same thing, $108,757,316. So moving down here to the long-term debt, it's literally the same thing, except you're going to take, for the proportion of total assets, you're just going to take the long-term debt value and divide that by the total assets. So for 2012, for long-term debt, you have $236,084,000, and then divide that by total assets and find the percentage. And do that for 2013 and 2014. And then find the average of those percentages and get 33.05%. And then take that percentage and multiply it by the forecasted total assets. So for 2015, I got $205,721,176. For 2016, $189,392,669. And 2017, $205,721,176. and 10,007,160. So for both of these, the trends go the exact same way. In 2015, they both increase from 2014, and then they significantly decrease in 2016, and then significantly increase in 2017. So, thank you.
Lexi here with the forecasted net interest expense. First, to find the net interest expense, you need to calculate the net financial obligation, which is right here. And that is found by adding short-term debt and long-term debt together. So you head to the Calculations tab, head to the first year, scroll down to short-term debt, long-term debt, add those together, and that gives you this number, so on and so forth for each year. Once you have found the net financial obligation, you need to find the interest rate. And the interest rate is found by taking the current year's interest expense, dividing that by the average of the previous year and the current year's net financial obligation. So as you can see in the bar, we have the interest expense for 2013 divided by the average net financial obligation found here and here, dividing that number by 2, and you get 2.9%. Once you have found the interest rate, you need to find the average interest rate, and that is taken or found by taking the average of these two interest rates. So 3% plus 2.9% divided by 2 gives you 2.95%. Once you have found the average interest rate, you have to forecast or find the forecasted net financial obligation, which is this number right here, which you find by taking the first year's forecasted short-term debt and long-term debt. So 2015 is our first forecasted year. Scroll down to the short-term debt, add that number to the long-term debt, and that gives you 312 million, which is this number right here. Up next, to find the net interest expense, you need to find the average net financial obligation, which is this number right here for the first year, and that is found by taking the first forecasted year's net financial obligation with the previous year's net financial obligation, adding those two together and dividing by 2, and that gives you 307 million, approximately. Once you have found the average net financial obligation, you simply multiply the forecasted average net financial obligation, which is the 307 million, times the 2.95%, and that gives you about 9 million. And that is the last step in finding the forecasted net interest expense, and you just continue to follow each of those steps for each year. So for 2016, for example, you take each step, find the net financial obligation, find the interest rate, calculate the average interest rate, calculate the average net financial obligation, and multiply the average net financial obligation by the average interest rate, and continue that on for 2017 as well.